Trump just blinked, and Iran is telling the world exactly why. Trump gave Iran 48 hours. Open the Strait of Hormuz. Without Threat or the United States would have power plants. Starting with the biggest one first. Capital letters, all caps. No ambiguity. A presidential ultimatum broadcast to every government, every oil trader, every military planner on Earth via social media. The deadline was Monday night, 7:44 p.m. Eastern. Monday morning, hours before the deadline expired, Trump posted again on Truth Social. I am pleased to report that the United States of America and the country of Iran have had, over the last 2 days, very good and productive conversations regarding a complete and total resolution of our hostilities in the Middle East. Very good, productive, complete, and total resolutions. I have instructed the Department of War to postpone any and all military strikes against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure for a 5-day period. The 48-hour ultimatum became a 5-day pause before the deadline expired, where a single power plant was struck, before the Strait of Hormuz as one additional tanker, and within hours of that announcement, before the market celebrations had even played out. Iran's Foreign Ministry issued its response. There is no dialogue between Tehran and Washington. No dialogue, not are at an early stage, not we are evaluating the situation, not diplomatic ambiguity designed to preserve no dialogue. Full stop. Between and Washington. Iran's foreign ministry said Trump's statements were an effort to reduce energy prices and buy time to implement his military plans. There have been initiatives by regional countries to de-escalate tensions. Iran's response has been clear. It did not start the war, and all such requests should be directed to Washington. And then Iranian state television put something on screen that every analyst, every diplomat, and every market participant needs to read with complete attention. Iranian state television displayed a graphic. U.S. President backs down following Iran's firm warning. U.S. President backs down following Iran's firm warning. That is how Iran is telling the story to its people and to the watching world. Not productive conversations. Not a diplomatic breakthrough. Not a moment of statesmanship. A retreat. Subscribe to this channel right now and hit the bell. Because what I am about to walk you through is the most strategically significant single day since Operation Epic Fury began. Not because of the bombs that were dropped, but because of the bomb that wasn't because. Of what a 5 days. War 2 got FTB, a wordies and witter of the better. Of dowdy dividends, evidence tells. Is Iran winning? Subscribe. Notifications on. This is the broadcast that answers that question with the evidence. Not the truth social posts, not the state television graphics. The documented record, you decide first, the sequence, because everything in this war is in the sequencing. To understand what Monday's 5-day pause actually means, you have to understand the sequence of events across the 4 days that produced it. Because the sequence reveals something that neither side is stating completely to run. Power plants, Vekis 48 to LT rent. Open the SRAP and A-way to our name meant, ordinal perfection of obliteration of Iran's power plants. Iran's RGC responded by saying it would hit energy and desalination facilities. In the Gulf, if the U.S. went through with its threat. The counter threat from Iran was specific and devastating in its implications. Desalination facilities. In a region where Gulf states co-locate their power stations with the plants that produce their drinking water. Iran was not just threatening to cut electricity. Iran was threatening to cut water. To countries like the UAE, Bahrain, and Qatar that depend on desalination for the majority of their freshwater supply. That counter threat landed hard. Iranian parliament spokesperson Ghalibaf had said critical infrastructure and energy facilities in the Persian Gulf region could be irreversibly destroyed should Iranian power plants be attacked. Irreversibly destroyed. Those two words reached every Gulf state leader, every European capital, every Asian government, dependent on Gulf energy. And every one of them made the same calculation. If Trump strikes Iran's power plants and Iran retaliates against Gulf desalination and energy infrastructure simultaneously, the consequences for the global economy extend far beyond anything a strategic petroleum reserve release can address. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said he had spoken to Trump on Sunday and expressed his concerns about threatened attacks on Iran's power plants. Sunday, Germany calling warning, expressing concerns Turkey, Egypt, and Pakistan had been passing messages between the U.S. and Iran over the past 2 days. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelhadi had called on Sunday with US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, Iranian Foreign Minister Iraqi, and his counterparts from Pakistan, Turkey, and Qatar. Sunday night into Monday morning, Turkey, Egypt, Pakistan, all the regional Miderato, working the phones in a frantic diplomatic race, lay race to prevent the Monday deadline from Pradiki and Akistadro. And Monday morning, hours before 7:44 p.m. Eastern, Trump posted, "5-day pause." Now here is what you need to understand about the sequencing. The 48 ultimatum was issued Saturday. Iran's counter-threat came Saturday, diplomatic pressure from allies and mediators built through Sunday. The pause was announced Monday morning. All of this happened before a single American bomb fell on an Iranian power plant. Iran did not open the Strait to trigger the pause. The Strait is still closed. Iran did not agree to talks to trigger the pause. Iran's foreign ministry says there are no talks. Iran did not agree to any of the conditions Trump set out in the Baltifesh. What Iran did was issue a counter-threat so credible to Gulf desalination, infrastructure to ill electricity across 9 countries, to entry architecture of the Gulf, that the diplomatic pressure it generated from America's own allies was enough to turn a 48 ultimatum into a 48 into. Hit the like button right now. Because that sequencing, what Iran did and what Trump then posted, is the single most important analytical fact of on Iran Day. And it is being lost in the market second. Your light keeps this analysis visible. 2 seconds. It matters. And what Iran said on the same morning lay out both statements side by side. Because they cannot both be accurate. And the gap between them tells you everything about the reality of this pause. Trump, Monday morning, Truth Social, the United States of America and the country of Iran, have had over the last 2 days very good and productive conversations regarding a complete and total resolution of our hostilities in the Middle East. Based on the tenor and tone of these in-depth, detailed, and constructive conversations, which will continue throughout the week, I have instructed the Department of War to postpone any and all military strikes against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure for a 5-day period. Trump told CNN there were 15 points of agreement with Iran. He told reporters Iran called first. He said the U.S. is speaking with a top person in Iran, but it is not the CEP letter. He said the Strait of Hormuz could be very soon if talks go well. One very nenestry. Same Monday morning. There is no 20T set. Iran's foreign ministry said Trump's statements were an effort to reduce energy prices and gain time to carry out his military plans. Iranian state television graphic. U.S. president backs down following Iran's firm warning. Taz. When I detain wet. Iran's foreign ministry acknowledged that some countries in the region were working to reduce tensions, but said Iran's response was clear. It did not start the war, and all such requests should be directed to Washington. 2 governments, 1 event, 2 completely irreconcilable descriptions of it. One says productive conversations, 15 points of agreement, complete and total resolution underway. The other says no dialogue. No talks, Trump backed down because of our deceive-tav. Trump told reporters the Iranian denial was the result of miscommunication within the Iranian leadership. Miscommunication within the Iranian leadership after 24 days of war. After Iran's supreme leader was killed. After a new supreme leader was appointed. After the most intensive bombing campaign in Middle Eastern history. Iran is courting to Trump experiental si intemetidas. Inti din outtain view into whether it is talking to the United States. U.S. officials told Axios, it is difficult to assess who is calling the shots in Tehran after so many senior figures were killed by Israel, with Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei remaining in the shadows. The United States does not know who is in charge of Iran, and it is conducting diplomacy, or what it calls diplomacy, with this entity. And Iran is saying that diplomacy is not happening. That is not a reassuring foundation for a 5-day window that the global financial system just priced as a peace breakthrough. Don't go anywhere, because what the markets did on Monday, the oil crash, the stock surge, and then the complicated pullback tells you more about who is winning this war than any government statement from either side. What the markets did, and what it actually means. West Texas Intermediate crude fell as much as 14% shortly after Trump made the announcement. On Truth Social, sliding to around $89 a barrel. Prices pared a significant portion of the drop after Iran denied there were any talks. Then resumed declines when Trump told Fox Business that a deal could come within days. Let me translate that sequence for you. Because it happened in under 2 hours, and it is one of the most volatile market episodes in oil trading history. Trump posts productive conversations. Oil drops 14%. Stocks surge. Market prices in peace. Han says no dialogue. Oil rebounds. Market partially reverses. Some of the peace premium evaporates. Trump tells Fox Business deal could come within days. Oil declines resume. Market chooses to believe Trump over Iran for the moment. WTI crude oil was up around $100 before all this, and then fell to a low of $84.3 on Trump's remark. However, it rebounded back to $93 down, just about 5% on the day. S&P 500 futures had a rough one and was down around 0.8% earlier in the day, then surged to post gains of 8% after Trump's comment, and then saw those gains halve to just 1.3%. Even with Monday's drop, here is the number that matters. Crude prices remain roughly a third higher than they were before the U.S. and Israel attacked Iran on the 28th of February. A third higher after a 14% drop after what markets treated as the biggest de-escalation signal since the war began. If you started with $87 oil before the 28th of February, and you dropped 14% from $113 on $18, you are still at $107. Still 11% above pre-war levels. Still pricing in a war that has not ended, as not open. With no verified diplomatic foundation, gas prices for the 23rd Kontuskov Denbendez reaching $3.96 national last national. 23 consecutive days of rising gas prices through Trump's winding down statement, through the 48-hour ultimatum, through the 5-day pause, through oil dropping 14% in one session. Your gas is still going up because the Strait is still closed, because the 5-day pause does not reopen the Strait, because Iran's $2 million toll booth is still operating, because the 40-plus energy facilities damaged across 9 countries are not repaired. Subscribe right now. Turn on the bell, because the 5-day window that markets celebrated on Monday expires, and when that expiration wore costs behind him, either the Strait has opened or Iran has agreed to terms, or Monday Speiter Trump faces the same choice he faced today, but with 5 more days of war costs behind him. Subscribe. Notifications on. I will be here the hour it breaks. The IEA's warning that everybody celebrated passed. While Trump was announcing productive conversations, and oil was swinging 14% in a single session, the head of the International Energy Agency was standing at a podium in Australia saying something that should have been the headline of the day. IE Executive Director Fatih Birol warned the global economy faces a major threat from the war's war CBSEC. No country will be immune to the effects of this crisis if it continues to go in this direction. He said at least 40 energy faculties across 9 countries have been severely damaged in the conflict. Birol said the current situation was worse than the combined oil crises of 1973. and 1979, which together lost 10 million barrels, 10 million. Then the combined oil crises of 1973 and 1979, one of the energy disruptions in modern histories, worse than the two worst energy disruptions of the 20th century, combined and happening right now, today. And the market celebrated a 5-day pause on the same day. The IEA said this. Birol said the agency was consulting with governments in Europe, Asia, North America, and the Middle East about releasing more stockpiles of oil, in addition to the historic 400 million barrels, released earlier this month. If needed, we can put more oil in the markets, both crude oil and products. Our stock release will help to comfort the markets, but this is not the solution. This is not the solution. The head of the IEA, speaking on the day markets, celebrated a potential solution, saying the tools he has deployed are not the solution. The solution is the Strait reopening. The solution is 20 million barrels per Dalton Y flowing freely through 21 miles of ocean. Again, the solution is the insurance market lowering war risk premiums to a level where tanker captains will transit. The solution is the $2 million toll booth dismantled. None of those things happened on Monday. What happened was that Trump did not strike Iranian power plants, and that is worth something. But it is worth something different from what the markets priced it as. The question that defines this entire war is Iran winning. S-Channel has asked this question at every major turning point of this conflict. And every time, the honest answer has been, it depends entirely on which definition of victory you are using. Today, on day 24 of Operation Epiri, the answer has shifted. And it has shifted in one direction. Here is the documented record. Not propaganda, not truth, social posts. The documented, published record. The United States issued a 48-hour ultimatum. Iran did not comply. The deadline passed without compliance. The United States extended the deadline for 5 days, without receiving any concession from Iran in return. Iranian state television called it U.S. President backs down following Iran's firm warning. That characterization, whatever you think of its framing, is factually accurate as a description of the sequence of events. An ultimatum was issued. A counter threat was made. The ultimatum was not executed. A 5-day extension was granted. That is what happened. Trump said Iran called first. Iran says there were no calls. Trump said there are 15 points of agreement. Iran says there is no dialogue. Trump says the Strait could open very soon. The Strait has been closed for 24 consecutive days. The IEA says this is worse than 1973 and 1979, combined 40 energy facilities across 9 countries severely damaged. Gas at $3.96 nationally, the highest in 4 years. The global food system facing a fertilizer disruption that has locked in harvest damage through 2027. And the man who launched the war that caused all of this in pursuit of the fastest military victory in Middle Eastern history is now announcing productive conversations with a country that officially says those conversations are not happening. Meanwhile, Iran's new supreme leader, in his Nowruz message 2 days before the pause, the enemy defeated. What point does the evidence demand that we take that claim seriously? The IEA's Fatayj well country will be immune to sex of this crisis if it continues to go in this direction. No country, not the United States, not China, not India, not Europe, not the Gulf states, not the developing world countries that cannot afford the fertilizer that is not moving, the food that will cost 12 to 18% more within 6 months, the fuel that prices every other commodity upward. Drop your prediction in the comments right now. Do you believe Trump's 5-day pause produces a genuine deal that reopens the Strait? Or does this become a second 48-hour ultimatum? A deadline that passes without compliance and requires another extension? Comment below. I read every single one. And if this breakdown is giving you the full analytical picture behind the market celebrations, hit the like button. These breakdowns take hours. Your like keeps this reaching the people who need to see it. What Trump told CNN. And the detail that nobody is covering. Trump told CNN there are 15 points of agreement between the U.S. and Iran following discussions over the weekend. He said he is talking to a top person in Iran's regime, but it is not the new supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei. Not the supreme leader. This is the detail that changes the entire diplomatic picture and that almost no coverage has adequately addressed. Faf Trump is talking to a top person who is not the supreme leader. And if Iran's foreign ministry says there is no dialogue at all, then there are two possibilities. Possibility one, Trump is talking to a mid-level Iranian official through intermediaries political reasons that Iran's foreign ministry either does not know about or has chosen to publicly for domestic political reasons. In this scenario, there is something real happening diplomatically, even if it is far less formal and far less advanced than Trump's 15 points of agreement language suggests. Possibility two, Trump is talking to people who are passing messages to Iran, but do not represent Iran's decision-making authority. In this scenario, the productive conversations are real, but they are conversations with Turkey, Pakistan, who are Reti-Ventistan, who are relaying Iran's positions, not with Iran itself. And what Trump is characterizing as Iran saying certain things is actually what these intermediaries are reporting Iran's position to be. Officials told Axios it is difficult to assess who is calling the shots in Tehran. So many Tidaz official by Israel, with Faki letter Mojay Tabake. The United States does not know who is in charge of Iran. It is conducting some form of diplomacy, direct or indirect, with a government whose decision-making structure has been disrupted by 24 days of the most intensive bombing in Middle Eastern history. And on the other side, Iran is officially saying it is not talking to anyone. Even before the war began, Iranian officials repeatedly warned that while it might start a conflict with Iran, he would not be the one to decide when it ends. He would not be the one to decide when it ends. That warning issued before the first bomb fell is now a document of day 24. The President of the United States issued a 48-hour ultimatum. He is not the one who decided whether to execute it. The counter threat from Iran, the pressure from Germany, the frantic phone calls from Turkey, Egypt, Pakistan, and Kuwait. And they decided 5 more days, the 5-day window, what actually has to happen, and how likely it is. Let me be very specific about what the 5-day pause requires to not simply become another deadline, requiring another extension. Trump said he has instructed the Department of War to postpone strikes, subject to the success of the ongoing meetings and discussions. Subject to success. So what does success look like? Trump said the Strait must be fully open, without threat. That has not changed for the Strait to be fully open. Not party open, not open for friendly. Nations at $2 million per tax. On Ewederstat, Wanerspat, but pretty open to Commerceat perfect the folly open. Not open for need to happen in 5 days. Would need to formally agree to forestall attacks on commerce sepping. Lloyd's of London would need to lower war risk premiums to a level where tanker operators will transit. The mine threat in the Strait would need to be assessed and communicated as cleared or manageable. Iran's shore-based missile systems would need to be confirmed as no longer targeting commercial vessels. And tanker captains who have watched 20-plus ships struck in the last 24 days would need to believe they are safe. Central Commander ADM Brad Cooper said Monday that the Strait of Hormuz won't be open. But the ships are staying away because Iran was firing missiles and Doshos Rans. Physically open, but ships are staying away because they get shot at. Opening a strait is not a geographic achievement. It is a security assurance. And 5 days with no confirmed diplomatic channel with Iran's foreign ministry. On record saying there is no Talak Sea assurance that would actually move tankers. Fakidis across 9 countries have been severely damaged. 5 days is not a lot of time to build the security assurance that would actually move. What this means for your gas prices, your groceries, Your retirement. Right now, U.S. gas prices rose for the 23rd consecutive day on Monday, reaching $3.96 nationally. Even with oil's dramatic drop Monday, crude prices remain more than a third higher than they were before the U.S. and Israel attacked Iran on the 28th of February. A third higher. After the biggest de-escalation signal the market has received in 24 days, after a 14% intraday drop in oil. After stock futures surged 2.8%, the relief in Monday's market move was real. It is worth acknowledging. The 5-day pause genuinely reduces the immediate risk of an oil catastrophe, of Iranian missiles hitting Gulf desalination plants, of Trump striking Iranian power plants, of the catastrophic spiral that the IEA's Barol was warning about. But that relief does not change the underlying reality. The Strait is closed. Day 24. Iran's toll booth charges $2 million per SHIP. Iran's own oil moves at pre-war levels through the same strait. 40 energy facilities across 9 countries severely damaged. Goldman Sachs projects elevated prices through 2027. The fertilizer damage to the 2026 harvest is locked in. The food inflation arriving at your grocery store in late 2026 is locked in. Gas at $3.96 nationally and rising for 23 consecutive days. The 5-day pause means those numbers stop getting worse at the rate they were getting worse on Sunday night. It does not mean they get better. It means a pause in a war that the IEA says is already the worst energy disruption since 1973 and 1979 combined. And the pause was achieved, according to Iran American, Melati pressure, but by Iran wardi that it would vwenti vishenwag. It would uni the sam, bounty. Your retirement. Markets surged on Monday. Some of those the 5 days produces something real. Some will reverse if the 5 days expires with the same conditions as today. Energy sector down slightly on oil's drop, but still the war's biggest sector winner. Every other sector still absorbing the blow of a war, whose economic consequences are locked in regardless of when the crew showed. Where we stand today, the 23rd of March, 2026, day 24. Trump announced very good and productive conversations with Iran and a 5-day postponement of strikes on Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure. Iran's foreign ministry said there is no dialogue between Tehran and Washington. It said Trump's statements were an effort to reduce energy prices and buy time. Iranian state television declared U.S. president backs down following Iran's firm warning. Oil dropped as much as 14% on Trump's announcement before recovering, partially. WTI fell from around $100 to a low of $84.3, then rebounded to $93. Gas prices rose for the 23rd consecutive day to $3.96 nationally, highest since 2022. The IEA said the current energy crisis is worse than the combined oil shocks of 1973 and 1979. At least 40 energy facilities across 9 countries severely damaged. No country will be immune if this continues. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed. Day 24, Turkey, Egypt, Pakistan, and Qatar are passing messages between Washington and Tehran, because Washington and Tehran are not talking directly. British Prime Minister Starmer welcomed any reports of productive talks, carefully not confirming that the talks Trump described are actually happening. Israel's military said moments after Trump's comments that it is conducting strikes on Iranian regime targets in the heart of Tehran. Even as Trump announced productive conversations and a 5-day pause, Israel was bombing Tehran. Because Israel and the United States supposedly conducting this war together apparently were not fully coordinated about what the 5-day pause means for Israeli operations. An Israeli official said Israel had been aware of indirect communications between the U.S. and Tehran, but was surprised by Trump's comments on Monday. We did not know things were moving that fast. America's closest ally in this war did not know things were moving that fast. That is the diplomatic architecture of the 5-day pause. Is Iran winning? Iran has not opened the Strait. Iran has not agreed to talks. Iran has not accepted any of Trump's stated conditions. Iran fired missiles through Israeli air defenses and hit 2 cities near Israel's nuclear facility 48 hours ago. Iran's supreme leader declared the enemy defeated on Nowruz. Iran's state television declared the U.S. president back down. And the United States, which launched the most intensive bombing campaign in Middle Eastern history, which killed Iran's supreme leader, which destroyed its nuclear program, which sunk most of its Navy, extended a 48 order ultimatum for 5 days without receiving a single documented concession in return. You tell me who is winning. Subscribe right now. Share this video with everyone in your life who saw the oil drop on Monday and concluded the war is basically over. It is not over. The Strait is still closed. The talks, if they exist at all, are mediated by third countries between 2 parties who cannot agree on whether they are talking. The 5-day clock is running. And when it expires, the choices are exactly what they were on Saturday, with 5 more days of war costs, 5 more days of $3.96 gas, 5 more days of the worst energy disruption in 50 years behind them. Evidence first, analysis second. You decide what it means. But right now, the 5-day clock is running. The Strait is still closed, and Iran is telling the world it never blinked. Subscribe. I will be here when the 5 days expire.